Solidarity shown for the dock workers who've decided to walk out today. The mood here, determined. Unions say this strike was months in the making, with tense negotiations since January culminating in this standoff.
These people have decided, enough is enough. And
are people just fed up right now?
I think they are. And I think if you speak to the folks around this roundabout in Felixstowe, you will have a strong sense that they just can't go on as they are. We know that some people here have been forced to using food banks. And of course, for every, this community revolves around Felixstowe docks. So for every, docker, they may well live with someone who's a public sector worker, a nurse or a care worker. So all these things balance out and they all play an important part. So we make no apologies for defending our members' terms and conditions.
This is the country's busiest port, handling about 48% of the UK's container trade. Usually more than 2,500 people work at Felixstowe Port. Among those striking are crane drivers, machine operators and people who load and unload ships. Workers here haven't been on strike since 1989. Speaking to them, you can tell that feelings are strong. And their message is simple, that while the profits of the owners of the port are high and the cost of everything in their lives is going up, they only want what's fair. The port spokesperson says an offer is already on the table. A 7% rise plus a single payment of £500, adding the average pay was £43,000. The strike, though, doesn't just affect those who work here or the port owners, of course, but the companies who have goods on the containers that they need. Do you have any sympathy for those groups right now?
Yeah, absolutely. And we know it's hard. We know it's hard for everyone out there. We don't want to be doing this. We tried our best not to do this. But it's in the company's hands. The company can choose to resolve this. The company can choose to come to the table and negotiate a settlement with us. They're choosing not to.
The British Meat Processors Association represent members who supply fresh meat to retailers. They're worried about the knock-on impact that 8 days of striking will have.
It will come at a cost. I do get annoyed when politicians talk about actually we have a very resilient food supply chain and they'll deal with it. That resilience comes at a cost. Brexit's come at a cost. The pandemic came at a cost. This will come at a cost. And that manifests itself either in higher consumer prices or lower profitability.
This is day one, but the strike will last for 8. Analysts predict this could disrupt £676 million of trade. The workers here say this is the last resort. Similar to those on the picket line at rail stations yesterday, both protesting that pay has to be above inflation or close for them to continue working.
Aisha Tal, joining me now from Merseyside is Paul Novak from the TUC. Thanks very much for coming on the programme, Paul Novak. What do you say to consumers who might be staring at empty shelves in 8 days from now?
Well, what I'd say to them, Matt, is that this is action that obviously those dockers in Felixstowe don't want to take. These aren't workers who are strike prone, as you've already said. These are workers who haven't been on strike for over 30 years. But these are workers facing a real terms pay cut, whose employer is making a profit, who handed out £99 million to their shareholders in the last year. And what they're saying is they can't afford another real terms pay cut. So, I'm sure that the last thing that those workers want to do is be out on strike. I would hope that the company will table a sensible offer, get round the table with the union and get that port working again.
OK, but it's the offers of just over 7% plus the £500. And the average salary of those workers is £43,000 a year. And there are many people watching this programme tonight who say, come on, that's actually pretty good.
Well, the salaries actually reflect the expertise and the skills of the people who are employed at the port. And a 7% pay offer is in effect a 3% pay cut. But, Matt, there's a broader problem here. Our cost of living crisis is actually a wages crisis. Real-term wages for workers right across the economy are lower now than they were a decade ago. Fuel bills are due to rise 23 times faster than wages this year. The average worker will be paying 2 months' salary on their fuel bills alone. Something's got to give, and the government has got to have a plan to get wages growing again in this country.
Right, but even economists who are not necessarily members of the Tory party or the government are saying, if you raise salaries by the same level as inflation, you're just going to make inflation worse, and therefore the inflationary spiral will get worse, and there is no escape from that.
Well, Matt, there's no evidence at all at the moment that wages are driving inflation. In fact, real-term wages are declining this year. What's driving inflation is energy costs, and that's something the government has signally failed to get a grip of. So there are things the government can do to hold down energy costs, and the TUC set out a plan for how we could boost the windfall tax to make sure that we held down bills. This stuff isn't inevitable. In France, energy bills will go up by just 4% this year, while British families will struggle to turn on the heating this winter. So it's not our members wanting reasonable pay rises that's driving inflation. The fact is we need to get wages growing again in this country, and we need to hold down prices.
At the beginning of the programme, we referred to some of the other people you might go on strike and those who've already been on strike. Mick Lynch, the head of the RMT, has said he would actually welcome a general strike. What's the TUC's line on that?
Well, that's not a discussion that we've had on our General Council when we've brought unions together.
But could we get to a general strike bit by bit? I mean, we're heading there, aren't we?
No, I think what we've been having is very serious discussions about how we support unions that are taking industrial action to make sure that action is effective, how we coordinate that action, particularly at a sectoral level. But the key thing is addressing the root causes of this action, which is that people are seeing real terms pay cuts. And employers have to step up to the mark, and so does this Conservative government.
One word answer, I'm afraid. Would you like to see the Labour front bench supporting the strikes on the picket line, yes or no?
I want to see all politicians support workers taking action.
OK, Paul Novak, thank you very much indeed.